All right, folks, welcome in to Pickaxe and Roll, brought to you by our good friends over at BetOnline. I am your host, Ryan Blackburn at NBA Blackburn on Twitter, part of the Mile High Sports Podcast Network, and I am here. I am excited to talk about the Denver Nuggets, who finally play a basketball game tonight. Woohoo! It's been a little bit for your Denver Nuggets. Going to be interesting to see how they respond. I've got a great stat about the Nuggets and how they have not performed as well when they have more rest than usual. But we will see how they respond tonight in a situation where they haven't beaten the Los Angeles Clippers yet. We will see if they can actually turn that around and maybe win once at home. That would be sick. We will talk about it all. We'll do about 15 minutes on the Clippers. We'll probably do about 15 minutes on some other things just in general. Going to be a shorter podcast, obviously. There hasn't been a lot to talk about from a Nuggets perspective over the course of these last few days. So we're just going to, I'm going to save my sanity on that. But hope everybody's having a good day. Thank you so much for tuning into the podcast. Always really appreciate the regulars in here. Cedric is in here. As always, we can force James Harden to pass. We will see. Dayon is in here. Start Jalen Pickett on James Harden. You know what? I don't hate it. I don't love it, but I don't hate it either. And Zeke Naji as center. That one I might hate. That's a toughie. But yeah, really nice to see some regulars in here for sure. Nolan's in here as well. We need this win. And Cedric pops in from the top rope with a super chat just as I'm about to get into my ad read. He says, for $1.99, no, Ryan, don't jinx us. You could be Santa Cruz, you big. I don't know. Like, are you talking about don't tell Santa Cruz? Like, who's another chatter in the comments? He's not even in here yet, is he? Yeah, we're just bing chilling. The Clippers have some injuries of their own. Jamal Murray is questionable tonight. Cedric, thank you for the super chat. I will attempt not to jinx Denver. I think the number that I'm going to put out there shows that Denver's going to lose tonight. So you're going to want to stay tuned and listen to that. But really quickly, this podcast, as you know, it's brought to you by the good folks over at BetOnline, your number one source for everything betting. From the earliest odds to in-game live betting, BetOnline provides you with all the action and the ability to watch the games as they happen, with the largest selection of odds on everything from football, the NBA, and college basketball, NHL to UFC. BetOnline, head on over there today and get in on the action. Use promo code BELIEVE, BLEAV, on your welcome bonus on your first deposit. BetOnline, the game starts here. All right. Thank you so much, everybody, for tuning into the show. Cedric did change his mind. He says, Santa Claus. You could be Santa Claus. You big. Are you calling me big? What the hell? How could you possibly say that? You can view the screen. That's crazy. Well, look at you. Nolan says, Kawhi is playing. Kawhi is definitely not playing. Ain't no way, dog. Ain't no way. Kawhi, if he plays 25 games this year, I will be shocked. Like, just does not look like it's in the cards for Kawhi or really for the Clippers this year, despite the fact that the Clippers they've gotten out to a good start. James Harden's done his job. It would be nice if Kawhi could get back and hold up his end of the bargain in a health perspective, but I don't think he's ultimately going to do that. But we're going to get into it. Let's get into some of the details. I wrote an article on Mile High Sports earlier this morning and posted it, and it said, what to watch for tonight for Denver Nuggets versus LA Clippers. I do one of these almost for every game. I really do try to do it for every game. After the Wizards loss, I did not do one for the what to watch for in Atlanta game. I would have predicted a win because the Nuggets are now 4-0 on the second night of a back-to-back, which is crazy. That's a crazy number when you think about it. The way that things have happened for Denver, you would not expect them to show out in those particular moments. But when Denver's had to get down to it, they've been very focused. They've been very locked in on that aspect of things, just making sure to fight through the fatigue and just play good basketball. Now, they've had some easier matchups on the second nights of back-to-backs, but hey, this is a NBA Cup semifinal team that we're talking here in the Atlanta Hawks, and Denver throttled them. That's the last game that Denver played before this long break. With 1 day off, which is the normal schedule for the NBA, with 1 day off, the Nuggets are 8-5. So if you're doing the math at home, they're 4-0. When on the second night of a back-to-back, they are 8-5 when they are on the 1 day off regular schedule. When the Nuggets have 2 or more days off this season, they are 0-5 as a team. And that includes the opener of the season because they obviously didn't play any games before that. They had plenty of rest before that one. But it's just wild. That is a wild thing to think about. 0-5 when they have the most amount of rest that they possibly can. I don't really understand that, if I'm being honest. Now, some of it is schedule, some of it is the teams that they are facing, but they faced these Clippers when they had multiple days off. They faced the Thunder on the season opener, obviously. That one did not go well. They faced the Minnesota Timberwolves, who, I mean, let's be honest, the Timberwolves don't look that good themselves. Jamal got hurt in that game, if I recall, and Denver had an opportunity to win at the end. Maybe if things go their way, they get one of those games, but 0-5 is 0-5. And it makes me think that when Denver has 4 days off here, I don't know what we're going to see from the Nuggets tonight against the Clippers. I don't know what we're going to see, despite the fact that they've lost multiple games against the Clippers, despite the fact that there's ample reason for them to try to turn this thing around. I don't know what we should be expecting from this Nuggets team because they don't tend to function that great as a team when given several days of rest. And Jokic has talked about this. He's talked about being better himself when he's just in a rhythm, when he's just either on the second night of back-to-back or just a every other day kind of schedule. You get into a rhythm. You don't disrupt that in any way, shape, or form. Some guys like the extra rest. I don't think Jokic is one of them. I talked about this with Matt on the other show. If Jokic was given the opportunity to play 82 games in 82 days and then have an extended offseason, he probably would do that. Not many guys would be willing to do that. Not many guys would be able to hold up from a physical standpoint, and maybe Jokic wouldn't either, but that would be kind of a crazy thing to watch for the NBA. But we'll see. We'll see what ultimately happens and how this game goes. But just know that heading into it, I have low expectations because of the stat that I just threw out there. 0-5 on 2 or more days of rest, and Denver's obviously coming off of 4 with this built-in NBA Cup schedule. As for other numbers to really value here, the last time Denver faced the LA Clippers, they let up 126 points. That's a lot. That is a lot of points when you are trying to do everything you can for guarding this particular team. The Clippers are the 23rd ranked defense, or 23rd ranked offense, in the entire NBA. And yet they seem to get easy shots against the Nuggets on a consistent basis. They have a very specific formula tailored around James Harden and Norman Powell as like, hey, we're going to run pick and roll. We're going to highlight your mismatches. We're going to attack your weaknesses. And we are going to do everything we can to make your life a living hell. They're technical wizards because what they do, especially Harden and Powell, is they leverage you into uncomfortable positions and then draw fouls. And Denver, shouldn't be one of those teams that falls into that because Denver's actually second in opposing free throw rate on the season, like the second lowest free throw rate in the entire NBA. You would never expect that. You would never think that based off of how they match up against the Clippers in particular, but it's actually true. Like Denver gets the second total free throw rate, but they allow, I'm just looking at it, 20.5 free throw attempts per game, which is 8th fewest in the entire NBA. Denver shoots 25.2 free throws themselves, they should be able to get to the free throw line more against this Clippers team. I don't know if they actually will be. This is a uniquely tough matchup for Denver, but there's a couple of reasons why I think it could actually be better this time around. First and foremost is the injuries that the Clippers are facing. They don't have Derrick Jones Jr., they don't have Terrence Mann. Obviously, they don't have Kawhi Leonard. And they don't have Kobe Brown, who's like really kind of a no-name guy that you're not going to really focus in on. But you do the math on them and you do the math on their rotation. There are just not a lot of big players left on their roster to guard Denver's bigger forwards, like Michael Porter and especially Aaron Gordon. If I go from a height standpoint, Derrick Jones Jr. is 6'5". He's actually their power forward much of the time. Kawhi is 6'7". Kobe Brown is 6'7". Amir Coffey is 6'7", but he's only 210. Nicholas Batum is 6'8", and then they've got some centers. So Nicholas Batum, Amir Coffey, and James Harden are their biggest forwards that they're going to be. And like Harden's not even really a forward, but he'll switch on to different matchups. So like they do not have the size in theory to contend with Aaron Gordon and Michael Porter throughout an entire basketball game. I think that the entire game plan for Denver tonight should be Jokic shoots 50% from three. Let's get him at the top of the key and then get Michael Porter and Aaron Gordon ducking in behind the defense, getting some easy baskets under the rim, drawing some fouls. It should be very easy for those guys to do that. Now, Nicholas Batum is a very smart defender. He'll wall off some of those passes. He knows what they're trying to do. He's a smart player. He'll be able to counteract that. Can James Harden do that? Can Chris Dunn and Norman Powell do that at 6'3"? Chris Dunn could probably do some stuff. I just don't really expect them to be able to handle that from a physical perspective for an entire game. So that would be how I would attack them and generate good offense on a consistent basis. On defense, Denver just has to give up drop. Like that's against this Harden team. What he has really done well this year is gotten everybody else involved. Harden is shooting 33.8% from three on the season. He is shooting 89% from the line. Gets there 7 times per game. He's not tremendous at that going for like this year, but he's shooting 38% from the field and 42% from two. Denver should be trying to get him to shoot floaters, to get to the paint, to try to throw the lob. As long as Jokic can deflect it a number of times, I think that Denver should be able to live with that. You try to limit the amount of opposing threes that the Clippers take, and you try to limit the amount of free throws that the Clippers take. If you can do that, then you can limit their amount of scoring. And if you force Harden to take 20 step-back threes, okay, if he takes 20 of them and makes 7, that's 35%, 1.05 points per shot. You can live with that on a consistent basis. So I think Denver should be going that direction. If it were up to me, force Harden to be a one-on-one player. Don't over-rotate to him. Don't get other people involved. Don't allow Norman Powell to go off as well. If Harden wants to go off and he wants to score 35, fine. That's what I would do if I were Denver. Force him to beat you. And if he can, then great. If not, then that's a good opportunity for Denver. So we'll see how Denver handles this. Jamal Murray is questionable in this game tonight. I don't know if I expect him to play or not. I wasn't at practice either of the last 2 days. I was sick, didn't want to go to the arena and potentially get other people sick as well. So I just think that at this point, if Denver has to start Russell Westbrook, they'll be fine. Like Russell Westbrook will be a better defensive option for one of Powell or Harden in most of those moments. Jamal has an opportunity in this particular one without Derek Jones Jr., with Terrence Mann sitting. Like, there's not as many defensive oriented guys on the Clippers perimeter. It's really just Chris Dunn, who's a great defensive guard, but he's only one guy. Like, if Denver was able to get Jamal going in this particular matchup, that would be great. I just don't really expect it, obviously. And then off the bench, like, Denver's going to play, like, hypothetically, if Jamal does play, Russell Westbrook will come off the bench. Julian Strawther will come off the bench. Peyton Watson will come off the bench. And probably DeAndre Jordan. And that's it. That's just Denver's rotation. Like, that's how it's going to be. I don't know what ultimately will happen with this group and whether they'll be able to figure some things out, but it just feels like this is a must-win of sorts for Denver to turn around the number that I shared before, 0-5 on games with 2 or more days of rest. Okay, this is funny. Friday the 13th, Mall coming. Let's go. That's very funny. I hope that the last thing I would love for Jamal to kind of prove me wrong on this and drop 30 plus and look really good and be a shining beacon for Denver just coming out of this this early first quarter stretch that they've had where 12-10, it feels like, yeah, they're fine, but like nothing really special. And part of the reason for that is Jamal. So like if he can get back to being special, then I'll get back to believing in him. But I obviously, like everybody else, I need to see it first. He needs to prove it again. So we will see what happens, but I am very curious to see. George asks, Ryan, am I tripping or did we just give Poole 7 of 20 from 3 and lose? Not sure if we want to let Harden do it too with a better second option in Norman Powell. Let me go check that box score real quick because I thought that Powell was, or that Poole was better than that. Yeah, Jordan Poole shot 9 of 20, but the other thing was he got 8 assists. He got to the free throw line. He got everything that he wanted from that particular game. 39 points. The issue that Denver faced was they also let Justin Champagnie go off with 23 points on 13 shots. Jonas Valanciunas also had 20 points. And that was the Wizards, obviously. So I'm not really campaigning for Denver to allow somebody to just like go off. But I think the best thing that Denver can do is make Harden into a one-on-one player as opposed to getting everybody else involved, which is where Denver allowed Norman Powell to go for 37 in the second game of the season, or for somebody like Derek Jones Jr., who's not playing tonight, but like somebody like Chris Dunn, for example. You don't want him to score 15. You don't want Ivica Zubac to score 20 plus. Like, do everything you can to keep the ball in Harden's hands and force him to take 30 shots. And if he scores 40 points on 30 shots, that's all right with me. I wouldn't be too worried about that. All right, let's take a break. When we come back, we're gonna talk about these 3-point issues real quick. And actually, I've got a stat on Harden and Powell between the first 2 games that I want to share from the article that I put out today. But I will do the 3-point issues as well that the Nuggets are facing. We will be right back here on Pickaxe and Roll. All right, we're back. Pickaxe and Roll, Ryan Blackburn here. Thank you so much for tuning into the show. Appreciate the love and support on the podcast, folks. If you can, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. Would really appreciate it. I do sound better. I feel like I'm feeling a little better. Throat is still a little bit sore from the sickness, but coming back around, we're going to be good by the time we go to the arena tonight. Hopefully things all turn out pretty good. I'm going to ask Michael Malone about that stat, about the 0-5 on 2+ days of rest stat. I'm sure that he knows it. I'm sure he's frustrated about it as well. So should be interesting to see. Martin says, sounded good, hair game on point 2. Bro, I have no idea what's going on with this, man. It just does not look. I mean, if it works, it works. So thank you very much. All All right, what was I going to share? It was the Harden and Powell stat. The problem that Denver runs into when facing the Clippers is that both Harden and Powell go off at the same time. They just do it in different ways. Harden in the second game had 39 points. In the first game, Powell had 37. They're both talented scorers. They could both get to the free throw line. Harden is really the facilitator. The real issue is when you combine their impact together. In the first game, they combined for 60 points and 16 assists. In the second game, they combined for 67 points and 12 assists. That's a ton of production. That's just a lot. And if you're the Nuggets, you have to figure out a way to make that better. Like you can't allow both of those guys to go off at the same time. And if you're going to do so, you have to make sure that it's inefficient as hell. There are ways that Denver can improve on that front, and I think that they will improve on that front. But Christian Braun has to be at the center of that. He's the starting wing defender for Denver. He has to be better at stopping one or both of those guys. And I don't care if he stops either one. Like it doesn't matter how Denver does it. Like maybe deploying him on Harden is a bad idea. Maybe Denver should just have Jamal Murray if he starts guard Harden and just not worry about the rest of it. And then they could have Christian Braun really focus in on Norman Powell, and maybe that's a better idea. I don't know. We'll see. The next thing is the three-point issues. I'm going to throw up this graphic on the screen. It is the entire league's three-point attempts per game. Obviously, this is kind of a crude way to do this, but I threw this into my chart, into my preview as well. This is what it looks like across the entire NBA. Boston is leading the league at 51.3 three-point attempts per game. That's a crazy number for what it's worth. Like that is so far and away a crazy number. The rest of the league, it's a pretty steady trend from about 43 to 33. Just kind of in that general range. You're going to be a little bit different every now and then, but it's pretty clear that some teams are going to take fewer, some teams are going to take more, but it's in that general 33 to 43 three-point attempts per game kind of range. Most teams have gotten with the times. Some of the good teams are that don't shoot threes as much. The Clippers are one of them, but they don't have a great offense. The Pelicans have been bad. Indiana, surprisingly, 19th in offensive rating. They are 28th in three-point attempts per game. Toronto's a bad team. Dallas is a good team. They're a great offense, obviously, but they rank kind of in that bottom third of three-point attempts per game. It's not a crazy thing. And then there's Denver, who is clearly the lowest team in the NBA from a three-point attempts per game standpoint. They average 30.5 three-point attempts. That is 2.5 threes fewer than the 29th ranked team in the NBA in three-point attempts per game. So I throw that up on the screen, obviously, because you see it visually and you're like, oh crap, that is not a good thing. That is a bad thing for the Nuggets. They are in a pretty tough position from a three-point perspective. And you're right. Like from a three-point perspective, Denver's not in a good place. I also threw this into my numbers from the preview today. One of the things that Michael Malone said on Media Day was that he wanted Nikola Jokic, Jamal Murray, and Michael Porter to each average one more three-point attempt per game. And that way Denver would be able to go from the number that they had in 2023-24 to a higher, more like equitable number in 2024-25. Well, in 2023-24, Denver was last in three-point attempts per game at 31.2. This year, obviously, 30.9. Or actually, that's not even true. It's 30.5. So they have dropped. They might be the only team in the league this year. I need to I need to actually do that. They might be the only team in the league this year to drop in their total number of three-pointers attempted. And if you look at it from the perspective of the Stars, Jokic has upped his threes per game from 2.9 to 4.4. That's pretty good. Like that's plus 1.5 in total threes attempted per game. Jokic is doing his part. Jamal Murray, 5.8 threes attempted last year, 5.8 threes attempted this year. It's absolutely identical in terms of probably not a good enough three-point attempt guy for Denver. Murray just can't get space. He doesn't want to shoot as many threes, and he isn't shooting as many threes. He has the opportunities to do so. His usage rate has gone down. It is very concerning to watch. And then there's Mike, who actually has really dropped. Mike last year was shooting 6.8 threes per game. Now he's down to 6.1. That is 0.7 fewer. So on the net, the Nuggets' top scoring trio has only upped their threes per game by 0.8. And that is far off of the mark that Michael Malone would have hoped for. And I think it's not necessarily their fault specifically, but when you don't surround those guys with three-point attempt threats, then there's no gravity from the other positions on the court in order to take tougher, like to turn some of Denver's tougher threes into some easier threes and make Mike and Jamal and Nikola more willing as a trio to take those threes on a consistent basis. Nikola, look, he's doing what he can. He's like 4.4 threes per game for him is, I think, a career high. So I don't blame him on that. Mike, Jamal, like those guys have to raise their volume as much as possible. Aaron is a little bit of a different story, as Johnny asks, what is AG shooting from three? AG is at 3.1 threes attempted per game. He's shooting 47%, but he did start the year shooting like 55% from three, so he's down a little bit. It was great that he started shooting the ball well, but he doesn't take as many as he probably needs to. And so much of spacing in the NBA is being willing to take those shots no matter what and forcing the defense to react to you. It's also one of the reasons why Denver as a team still shoots a really good percentage from three. They are overall 7th in the entire NBA in three-point percentage because they take good shots. They don't take bad shots from three most of the time. They take the ones that they need to, not the ones that they want to. And I think that that's interesting. It's a very fascinating kind of counterbalance between a modern team and what it looks like to be the Boston Celtics or the Cleveland Cavaliers or hell, the New York Knicks, who are like, those guys are killing it from the offensive end. All three of those teams are really, really good, particularly because they get to play the Eastern Conference. But even when they're playing the West, like those teams are dominating from an offensive standpoint for the most part. So a lot of it is because the three-point attempt volume is up. The spacing is up. Every single player is a threat. Cleveland, Evan Mobley, he was splashing threes against the Nuggets when they were facing him. He's not necessarily like a massive threat. I'd compare him to Aaron Gordon favorably or so. But Donovan Mitchell, he's getting those shots up. Darius Garland, still getting those shots up. 6.8 threes per game for Darius Garland. 9.1 threes attempted per game for Donovan Mitchell. 9.1. That is a crazy number. Jared Allen's not a three-point shooter, but he has so much gravity going to the rim on the roll that other guys, especially off the bench, are willing and able to do it. And you look at these numbers for their bench guys. Karis LeVert, 3.6. Dean Wade, 4.3. Isaac Okoro, their starter now, he's only at 2.6. George Niang, 4.6. Sam Merrill, 5.2. Like, those are some high numbers for bench guys. And then you look at Denver's bench. Russell Westbrook, 3.6. He's actually upped his volume, and he's been reasonably efficient. Julian Strawther, 3.5. Peyton Watson, 2.3. Dario Saric, when he plays, 1.9. There's just not as much volume there. Denver needs the volume. They need somebody that's willing to just jack them up. And they don't have that right now. I thought that Julian Strawther was going to be more of a high volume 3-point shooter than he was. On the season, he is averaging per 100 possessions 7.9 threes attempted per 100. Last year was at 12.6. That is a drastically different volume. And like, look, he's shooting 40%. I don't want to complain about it too much. But Denver needs guys that are able to take away the pressure. And maybe he can do that. Maybe that's fine. But I do think that so much of it is Denver doesn't have guys that are willing to take an overly large number of shots. And part of that is because of Nikola. It is not Nikola's fault. Let me reiterate that. It is not Nikola's fault. But when you're playing through a guy so much, 113 touches per game, if you enter the ball into the post over and over and over again, it is naturally going to be a paint shot or a cut, or like the team is going to be thinking, I could either take a kind of mid 3-point attempt or I could pass it to the best player in the world when he's got post position. That is a tough balance for most people. And it's just kind of a natural inclination and a natural hesitation that I think a lot of these Nuggets have, including Jamal Murray, by the way, who probably looks at the way that he's playing and looks at the way that Nikola's playing and is like, why the hell would I take these shots? Why would I take these when I could pass it to the best player in the freaking world? And I understand that perspective. I understand that mentality. So I think that part of the thing that Denver has going for them is they don't have to be a fully modern team when they have Nikola Jokic. They don't have to be that crazy. But I do think that just the minor tweaks, the minor things. Russell Westbrook, obviously, like, he will take those shots, but it's not his first, like, wiring to do so. Like, he wants to get downhill and he wants to set up the pass on the move. When it's Christian Brown in place of Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, KCP last year was averaging about 4 threes per game. Christian Brown this year, I believe, 2.6. So Christian Brown's been a better player, but I just think that that's obviously going to condense the floor a little bit more. Going to be attacking the paint a little bit more. Aaron Gordon wants to attack the paint. Michael Porter, he's gotten bigger. He's going to want to attack the paint. Jamal Murray, he can't get space on the perimeter. He's going to try to attack the paint. Nikola Jokic, the best player in the world, the most physically dominant player in the world right now, wants to attack the paint. I don't blame any of these guys for that at all. But I do think that this is just kind of a natural byproduct of the way that the Nuggets have set up their team. I'm very curious to see how this changes, how it evolves over the season. But obviously, Denver is so far behind the 8 ball in terms of 3-point attempts. Let me be clear. Like, 3-point attempts do not equal wins. They do not equal offensive rating. That is not a correlation at all. Denver's right now 7th in offensive rating, I think, on cleaning the glass. They're really good. They're really good as an offense, maybe 6th or 7th. Dallas is also a great offense, despite the fact that they don't jack up threes. It is not a requirement to take threes to win games. But it does help your best players. It helps your best players be better. I think having a better 3-point spaced group would help Jamal specifically, because there would be a little bit less help in the middle of the floor in those moments. I don't necessarily like Jamal should be able to do it no matter what, but that's just something that I'm thinking about. Yeah. Either way, will be interesting to see how Denver handles it. All right. We will see what happens for this game tonight. I'm very curious to see how they approach it. Will they break the curse of multiple days off and be able to get a win? I'm very curious to see how they can match up with the Clippers. 0-2 against the Clippers so far this year. But that is going to do it for this episode of Pickaxe and Roll, brought to you by our good friends over at BetOnline. Thank you so much for tuning into the show. Appreciate the love and support on the podcast as always, folks. This was a good episode. This was a fun episode. Thanks for hanging out with me. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button on the way out. We're moving on Mile High Sports here. Keep supporting the program. It really helps us. I will talk to you guys very soon.